Welcome to this week's Ruck Off Rugby Podcast with me, Sam Leeming.
And me, Mark Moss.
This week we've got another special guest as Canada's under-20s captain, Will Matthews.
Yeah, so we'll talk about playing for Canada, leadership with Will, his time with the Toronto Arrows Academy and his progression up through Quebec's rugby. Welcome to the Ruck Off Rugby Podcast, Canada under-20s captain, Will Matthews. Will, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Very well. Yeah, cool. So basically what we want to talk about is, your journey to becoming Canada under-20s captain. Where did rugby start for you?
Well, pretty much in my family, it's like a huge part of the family. You'll see like rugby posters all around the house. So my dad, he got me into rugby at age 6, actually, which is a pretty young start, I think. Just playing touch out in St. Anne's. And that transition to playing youth rugby for Beaconsfield, where I think tackle only started at age 10 or so, but that's when I think the second tackle kind of got introduced. That's when I was just loving the game. And I think that transitions to me being a 7 now, as tackling's a huge part of the game. But yeah, so went from Beco to playing high school rugby at Loyola High School. And then from there, kind of got introduced to playing Quebec rugby. And you'll see later on, I'll speak about kind of the transition into Quebec rugby to Canada, but that's basically how it goes. But then from there, played a bit of Canada rugby and then went on to university. So yeah, that's where.
So cool. Yeah, you just mentioned playing for Quebec. What age did you start playing for Quebec, and how did that start for you?
My first year was U16, so I was 15 or 16 years old. And actually back then I played, if I've been playing rugby for 12, 13 years now, I think I played 9 years of 9 or 8 or 9 years of 9. So I've been a 9 for most of my life. So I started playing Quebec as a 9. But then I got transitioned to back row just because the other 9 was better than me. And so that's when I started playing 7 and 6. Yeah.
Good stuff. And yeah, obviously developing that into the international team. How did you get spotted by international coaches, and when did that start for you there?
So the way it works here is pretty much from CRCs, so Canadian Rugby Championships, where all the provinces come together and play. You have, I'd say, I'm actually not sure of the number, but you have a lot of coaches who are just sitting on the sideline and watching you and finding talent. And so that's how they scout for the Canadian team. And so it was from the U16 Quebec team that I got chosen to go to the U17 camp, Canada camp, which isn't necessarily a team. It's more of a training development team where we don't play anybody else, but we just practice for a week or so. And once from there, I think that puts you on the radar for the future years. So for U18, there used to be a U19, but it just got switched into U20. And so, yeah, that's sort of how you get put on the radar for being a Canadian athlete here. And it's mainly through the provincial rugby.
Within rugby in school and stuff, I know USA is up and coming with their rugby programs, and I know they're very strong at the 7s. Is rugby quite strong within your schools and within the schools you play against, or is it quite a development stage? So
starting with high school, I'd say it really depends on what province you live in. So out in BC, the high school rugby is really good. You have teams like Shawnigan, Brentwood, Oak Bay. These are all like really good high school teams. And I went to a really good rugby high school. So we were very dominant and we had a lot of good players, but the other teams in our league weren't so good. So we were seeing a lot of like 60-0 wins, 70-0 wins throughout high school, which wasn't great for development. But we did have a few good games in there. But then in the university level, it's really good. So I'm in the OUA, so the Ontario University League. And we won that league, but we did have some very good competition, like Guelph. Guelph was a really good competition. But then the second it got to nationals, that's when you start seeing universities from out west who teams like UBC and UVic are extremely dominant. And it's almost like a new kind of rugby that I saw this year, because these are men and they're very physical. So Yeah, so I think the level of rugby is quite good. And UBC actually went on to play in a university tournament around the world, and they were playing teams, the best, I think they played one of the best universities from New Zealand, South Africa, and Japan. And although they lost all 3 games, they still were able to stick in, give it a good fight and stay in the fight.
Yeah, I think that's I think you're going back to your high school stuff there. I think that's quite a prevalent point, that rugby within Quebec high schools isn't fantastic. No. I think Loyola's just totally a different kettle of fish, with obviously having a very good coach in there, Andy Plimer, who runs another podcast, doesn't he, Rugby Coach's Corner, who's pretty much world renowned within what he does, Andy. Like, he's got a really good coaching reputation, and I think for any team to have him and really be pushing that development through Loyola was massively key for them to be successful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I would say I've been extremely lucky with the coaches that I've gotten, from Andy Plimer to John Lavery as well, who coached me a lot in the Quebec Academy and for Team Quebec. And also my university coach, Dave Butcher. I've just been very lucky with the coaches that I've gotten, and they really know how to push me.
Yeah, I think from having my own experience out in Quebec, there's a few very, very good rugby coaches. Look at Joss Barrio, John Lavery, like you say, Andy Plimer. Really, really good coaches, and you've been experienced to them. I think they've been massively key within your development and within the development of Quebec, Rugby Quebec. Yeah,
for sure. And even in the past, so if you were to look in the last 15 years, Rugby Quebec would have never won a game against BC. But 2 years ago, when I was playing U19 and John Lavery was coaching the team, we won our first game against BC, which was huge, and that was really exciting.
So we're going to talk about, I think it's quite a cool area to go into, the development of rugby in Quebec. Obviously, you've come up through this transitional period of where Quebec haven't been particularly strong, but now they're really starting to come into their own and really starting to do there. Where's that change come from?
I think you can also, I mean, it's a huge part of it is the coaching. You know, as we mentioned, John Lavery is a really good coach for Team Quebec, but I also think it's, even at the senior level, the Quebec team is very strong now. And I think that's because of the Quebec Rugby League, actually. The University League and the Club League has improved like immensely in the past few years. And looking at a team like Concordia, their rugby program has just shot through the roof in the last 5 years. And like it goes to show you, they lost to UBC, who has won the Nationals for the past 3 years, except for this year. They lost to them by 2 points at Nationals. And it just goes to show you how Quebec, even at the university level, is getting really strong.
Well, and I think it's a good indicator of how strong it's getting. If you've been appointed as Quebec as Rugby Canada's under-20 captain as well. Yeah. It's always been quite rare, hasn't it, within Canadian rugby for Quebecers to be playing within the national setups, within age grade and within the senior setups. How have you found that, being one of, how many, I think there's 2 Quebecers in the 20 setup? Is that right?
This year, there were, at the camps, there were 3 of us, and then on the tour, there was one, I was the only one on the tour.
Okay. So how was the tour? That was to Portugal, wasn't it?
Portugal, yeah. That was a really fun tour. I think that was my favorite. First of all, it was a really good group of guys, but also we actually won against Portugal, which we hadn't in the last 5 years. We lost the first game, and then we beat them in the second game. So yeah, I added a lot to the tour just to be able to win, because even at the trophy last year, we came pretty close to a few teams. Like we lost to Tonga by 1. Yeah, so I think to finally get a good win in felt really nice, wearing the leaf. So yeah.
Where else have you toured, Will, with Canada? Has it just been to Portugal, where you went to? I know you said you went to be with the Arrows over this period, but obviously with COVID, it's taken a hold. Where else have you been and challenged yourself?
So at the U17 level, it was just in Ontario, but then U18 we went. So the main training grounds for age grade Rugby Canada is in Shawnigan Lake in BC, and so you would go there a lot, just back and forth to train. But I've been to Hong Kong as an under 18, Arizona in the States as well. And then last year for U20s, we started off in Shawinigan, and then we went to, I'm having a blank. We went to Portugal last year as well, and Spain. And yeah, I believe that's it. But this year we were supposed to go to England actually first. I think I was supposed to be there right now.
Oh yeah.
And then Uruguay, and then for the trophy again in Spain.
Awesome.
That's really cool. It's just shame that obviously they got cut short. Massive shame for you. But tell me what it means to play for your national team, and even more importantly, to lead that team and be the captain.
I think it's super thrilling. That's the way I would explain it. And I've played with them for 3 years to kind of make some good friendships on the team as well. So it's a lot of fun as well when I'm there. But just to be able to play against other countries as well is really thrilling, because it's like it's really cool to be able to kind of be your team as a country and then play other countries. That's kind of the best way I can explain it. I don't really.
Cool. So yeah, obviously you were selected for the captaincy. Why do you think that was, and what do you think makes an effective leader of a national team?
Yeah, so I was kind of you brought me up with that question. I was kind of looking back at it, and I wouldn't say that I'm a very vocal leader. So I wouldn't really see myself giving a huge speech in the locker room before a game, because I don't really think that's kind of who I am. And there were other guys who did make those speeches before the game, but I would say that I was more of a silent leader. So just the way that I act on the field. And I think I'm aggressive, and one thing that it's kind of not really related to leadership, but I'd say my line speed is one of my strong points in the game. And when you look at someone running up and making a tackle and getting back on their feet and getting back on the line and then sprinting up again, I think that motivates others to kind of get pumped.
Yeah, leading by example.
Yeah, so I would say I'm more of a lead by example kind of person, and where I show my leadership on the field instead of off the field.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, so there's that transition from 18s to 20s, and then basically 18s into senior rugby. How have you found that? You talked about when you were with Queens, going from that to playing against men, for Beaconsfield just playing against kids to playing against men. How have you found that transition?
Yeah, so I think it's more of a physical transition. So just beating up your body. I mean, playing back in high school, I remember being kind of more on the dominant side, because I'm not the biggest. I wouldn't say I'm the biggest back row at all. But yeah, just playing in a men's league, you really feel the physicality, and you really feel also the speed. It's a lot faster. And so I think at first it was kind of a shock, and even my coach for university kind of told me that you started off the year a bit slower, just because I had to sit back and look at what I was dealing with. But as the games went on, I felt more comfortable, and I thought that I was at the same level.
It's interesting, Will, because I think if you've been following, rugby in the UK, sort of 3 years ago, they went through a huge phase of up and coming players just putting on size and wanting to be as big and as strong as possible. I think that's changed a little bit now, and that culture's shifted. You look at Michael Hooper, for example. He's only five whatever, and he still performs in the international stage. What's been, has there been a shift like that in Canada? How has that been?
Yeah, so it's interesting you mentioned that. Before the whole COVID-19 situation, I had a meeting with my university coach. Mm-hmm. And I sat down and I told him, so right now I'm sitting at about 203 pounds, so 93 kilos, 94, I'm not sure in kilos. So that's for sure on the lighter side of a back row, very light. And so I sat down with my coach and I told him, look, next year, I think I want to come in at 215, which is a 15-pound gain, which is not too much. It's very doable, but he kind of sat back and told me that he kind of wants me to focus on my speed and skill rather than gaining size, just because if I focus on gaining size in one summer, he thinks that first of all, that can cause injury, and second of all, you're just throwing on weight that your body's not used to using on the field. So I've kind of gotten it in my head that obviously it is important to have size, but if you can use your body in a more effective way, then that's more important than gaining size fast. And so that's kind of what I've gotten used to. And obviously I do want to gain weight, because I'd say my goal for weight in the next 3 years is about 225. So that's 100 kilos.
Yeah, the flankers over here are sitting about 100k plus. 100k is probably the limit, the minimum limit.
Exactly. So, but I think if I can sit at 100k and be a very mobile 7, because I think that's the most important part. If you're 110 kilos but you're not mobile, then you're not going to be a good back row. So I think that the fact is, if I keep my mobility on the field, then I think that's more important than gaining.
Yeah, I've known you for a few years now, Will, and it's always been that topic of conversation with you, isn't it? Gaining weight, and you really struggle to gain weight. How long's that How long has that taken for you to come to terms with it's not all about just being big, it's about being skillful? Because I know from when we were talking a couple of years ago, you always just want to pile on those pounds and get bigger. How long's that taken you for you to come to terms with this?
I think it really happened this year, because I always thought before going into university, I'm just going to get smoked sitting at 200 pounds playing in a men's league, and I just thought there's no way I can compete. But I think I've just kind of accepted that I might not gain weight fast, and I just have to work with what I have now. So I think that helps me with my tackling. So the lighter I am, I think I'm going to tackle more technically. So I think I'll have better chop tackles if I'm light, because if I get heavy, which obviously I want to, but I think I'm going to start trying to use my weight as I don't really know how to explain it, but kind of use my weight as a way to change my technique, and think that because I'm heavier, I can make more dominant tackles. But I don't think that's the way it is. I think that technique will always override weight and power. And so I've kind of come to terms with that.
That's really cool. So discussed a little bit about your time with Toronto Arrows within their academy. I think you spent 2-3 months with them before lockdown, all this stuff kicked off with COVID. What have they been? What's been their biggest influence on you? What they've been working on with you?
So that's because that's in, I think it goes from January to, it's supposed to go to April, or in the summer. So it was mainly indoors in the gym. We were about 10 to 12 people, kind of everyone from Eastern Ontario would come together who were selected for the academy. And it was a really small group, and we had usually 3 or 4 coaches working with 10 to 12 people. So your every move is watched, which I loved, just because you can always do a drill and look at a coach and ask for advice, because they're always watching you. So I thought that was really good. And their main goal with the Arrows Academy is just to breed kind of a pool of players that the senior Canada team and the senior Arrows team can kind of pick and choose from. And so they want to just start breeding university players young, and kind of get the Arrows playing style into those young players. And so that kind of goes into how you go from university or age grade rugby into the senior level and into the MLR. And it's just pretty much you have the east side. So the problem that used to happen is it was just in Langford, BC, and it was just located there. And so you have guys who are super skilled but aren't willing to move to Langford, all in the east of Canada. And so now they've kind of split it into 2, and they have an east section, which is the Arrows. So you have guys there that are also getting a chance to play rugby at a high level. And so I think that's going to really help Canada in the future.
Definitely. What are your views on the MLR currently? How's that going? What's a young up-and-coming rugby player's view on the North American League?
I think it's really good, honestly. And I was thinking about this before. I think one of the the best things about it, because Canada's missing a sort of hype around rugby. So you have that hype around football, you have that hype around hockey, you have it around soccer, but when it comes to rugby, no one really kind of looks at rugby and says, oh, that's an interesting sport, no one will watch that. But I think MLR is kind of changing that, because now you have semi-pro teams playing in your hometown, and you start getting interest in that. And so I think that's one of the best parts about the MLR for Canadian rugby. But also another part is it gives young talented players something to look forward to and something to actually look at and say, like, I want to play for that pro team, which I think is really cool.
Does Canada have any plans to get any more of those pro teams up there? And is it just the Arrows in Canada at the moment?
Yeah, it's just the Arrows right now.
Yeah.
So I'm not really sure about that. I've heard speculations that potentially Montreal could be the next team to have one, or
So have I.
Some teams out in BC. But yeah, I heard a speculation that Montreal might be the next. But I'm not really sure. Right now they're really focused on the Arrows, and the Arrows are actually doing very well in the MLR. I think they were like 4 wins.
Yeah, doing well.
Yeah, so they're doing fairly well. So right now I think their main focus is on them, but I'm sure they're looking to open up some more teams here, because they've seen a lot of positives come from the Arrows.
Definitely.
That's really cool. We've spoke to quite a few people that are in a similar-ish situation to you, playing a high level of rugby, but maybe not gonna make it big time there. I mean, you obviously have aspirations. What are your aspirations within rugby? Are you wanting to try and make that jump to the MLR? Are you wanting to play for the national team? What's your view? What are your goals there?
Yeah, so right now I think my main goal is just to finish university and play that university rugby. But I've told myself kind of to set maybe 2 or 3 years after university, if it's not too late, if I'm not too old, but 2 or 3 years where maybe I don't start to look for like a long-term job yet, and maybe I kind of even travel to England or travel to Australia just to play for a club and try and rise in the ranks. But yeah, so my main goal right now is to finish university and come out with the degree, and then kind of just take it from there and see what opportunities I still have. So if that's playing for the national team at that level, then yeah, I would love to do that. If it's playing for the MLR or even going to another country, I kind of have my doors open.
Again, we've spoken to a lot of university players here in the UK. What opportunities are there for players like yourself coming out of school and high school? What opportunities are there to get into these higher teams, whether that be semi-pro or pro? Is that quite a good pathway, or is it, again, something that's still developing into the Arrows and things?
So I would say not very many people. So I know, like, in England, you come out of high school and you can play for an academy right away, or even during high school you play for academies, but that's not really a big thought in people's minds after coming out of high school. Usually they're just thinking of, playing for university rugby, or even just like, for example, the Quebec Academy. A lot of people look to do that, but I know a lot of people that being on the national U20 squad, or even just playing club, who I think their vision on it is they have to reach out themselves, and they have to reach out to other. So for example, they would have to reach out to clubs in England or in Australia, let's say, and kind of look for opportunities there. I wouldn't say many people are picked from those countries to come out, but there are for sure some, like Tyler Arjon. He's a Canadian player in Super League. He's playing for the Chiefs. So that's one person who made it to the top pro league. And so it's obviously a possibility.
Sure.
But
yeah, I'd say the biggest difference in that, from experience in both environments, is if you want to go and play at that next level in Canada, you need to look for your opportunities.
Yeah.
And you need to make phone calls, and need to move to British Columbia, need to try and move to New Zealand, you need to try and move to England. Whereas clubs try and find you out here, they try and get you in at a young age and push you through there. Whereas you really have to look for it and try and take opportunities. There's just no system there for really you to be found out.
Yeah, exactly. It's more of a personal effort. You have to go out and reach out. I mean, unless you're, I would say unless you're like a super freak athlete, then I think you would get some eyes on you. But other than that, I think you have to do most of the work yourself.
Yeah. So what are your aspirations outside rugby? You talk about wanting to finish your degree. What you're studying? What line of work do you want to move into?
I'm studying engineering right now, so I'm doing civil, and hopefully I'll merge into environmental engineering. But as for jobs, I'm not really sure what I want to do. Kind of just see where the degree takes me. Maybe even go into business after, because that's a possibility with an engineering degree. But yeah, I'm not really sure exactly what I want to do after. But yeah.
That's cool. Right. Well, I think that's a good place to conclude. We ask all our interviewees at the end of each podcast 3 questions, which I haven't sent you. So you haven't seen these yet. So these are, the first question is, what's the best piece of advice that you've been given by any coach, anybody, about either your life or about your rugby life? What's the best bit of advice you ever had?
This is gonna sound very cheesy.
Yeah.
But kind of just that, nothing's given to you, so you gotta go out and get it. And so, like, if that's rugby, like, you're not going to be given an amazing opportunity. You got to go out and get it. So I'd say that's kind of the advice.
Okay. Second question is, what book or series would you recommend somebody to go and watch now to maybe inspire them through this, let's say, unpredictable times? And you can't say The Last Dance, because everybody would say that.
I'm reading a book right now. It's I think it's called Amazing Expeditions or Amazing Survive. It's a book. I'll send you the name, but it's pretty much a book about a bunch of survival stories, which I think is the perfect time to read that, and just how people got out of these dire situations.
That's pretty cool. And final question: what's next for Will Matthews?
I think I'm just taking life by the toe and just going with it. I don't really know what's next. I would say
university is probably going to be online next year for you.
It's already online.
Is it?
Yeah, and there's no rugby, or most likely no rugby. So it's a bit of a different year. I would say rugby's next, but not right now.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Well, if people want to follow your journey through Canada, through university, where can they find you on social media?
On Instagram as Will Matthews.
Yeah.
With a Z.
With a Z. Is that because you can't spell?
Yeah.
And Sam, where can they find you?
I'm Sam Leeming 10.
And I'm Mark Moss 1996. And thank you for watching.